Good evening, everybody in YouTube land. It's your buddy Chop It On coming at you with another episode of Chop Talk, brought to you by DFSArmy.com, your one-stop shop for everything daily fantasy sports. The most amazing thing that I'm going to tell you about is we're starting to blend into NFL stuff. We're starting to bring along season-long, preseason stuff. We're working on content, organizing schedules, organizing our content contributors, and we're really going to rock and roll early this year and get ahead of the wave and the interest level that everybody has, because obviously NFL is king. We're not going to drop NBA or NBA or MLB or NHL or PGA or MMA or any of that stuff. You know, we cover all of those sports. So it's a good time now to become a VIP and follow that link in the comment section of this video to DFSArmy.com, where you use coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, and you jump in before our prices go up, because as I start talking more and more NFL, you're going to start feeling those prices. They're going to get closer to going up. And I haven't received a deadline on it yet, but I know they're coming. So jump now, get in and get ahead of the curve with all the content that's coming your way. Today what we want to do is focus on the express slates and the late night slates, the 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock slates, for 3 gamers each. If you really want to, obviously dive in and focus on the main slate with chin music and get the content there. But what you're going to see is how things start to shift a little bit as we start cutting out some of the player pool. Different guys become the chalk. Different guys become must-have players. So let's really roll through the playable players tonight and get you up and running here so you've got enough time to really make some lineups and really start making some stuff happen. And then at the end, I'm going to show you something, neat little trick to the Domination Station for our VIPs. So let's dive in. We go to the starting pitching matchups here, get out of the trends tab, and we've selected the 8 o'clock games, 3-game slate. And what we see is Lance McCullers, Luke Weaver are up top. When I look at these guys, that's a big extreme between expensive and not so expensive. If you follow chin music, they're both on there. Rodon, Marquez, Shelby Miller, not really on there. So these are your 2 chalky pitchers, and honestly, unless people are really diving into I guess the Coors game, they're not going to be, taking a lot of McCullers in that case. They'd be taking probably Weaver, maybe a little Marquez, Miller, whatever. But your overwhelming chalk on this slate should be Lance McCullers at that high price, forcing us into value bats. That's going to be tough to do on a 3-game slate. So actually, maybe it will drop his ownership down a little bit. But that's who we should be gunning for, especially in our cash formats. He is by far the best pitcher on the slate. Now, maybe not on the big, 10 or 12 game main slate, but on this 3-game slate with what we have offered to us, he is by far and away the safest pitcher to use. Going into the trends tab and showing you how I sort out my L7 WOBAs here. I put it at 350 on 3-game slates. I make this filter number a little bit lower to bring in some more players to give me a chance at completing some stacks if that's the direction that I want to go. And what I came down to was targeting the pitchers. I need to go back to the pitchers, targeting these pitchers at the bottom. Bassett, Miller, maybe a little bit of Marquez. Houston, Colorado, Arizona. I don't know about Houston, but Colorado and Arizona were mentioned. St. Louis is hot too. We may include some of them. So when I'm looking here, I'm look at Arizona and show you, this is not in any particular order of the teams that I like. I'm going to look for who's running hot. And what I'm finding is these are your playables. Goldschmidt, Pollock, Avila. You're going to have to double check, make sure they're in the starting lineups. Peralta, Descalza, Ahmed, Marte, John J. Mathis. I know that Ahmed and Marte and Goldschmidt were on the list today. It may have updated this afternoon since I got in there, because these numbers are a lot higher than what I showed before, although I probably cut out the 25 and the 5 of Pollock and Avila and the 28 of Descalzo, just to make sure we're dealing with players that generally start and hit the starting lineups. Although you see these guys in there, they're also in play, so that's your little secret tip tonight for you. Colorado, Blackman, Gonzalez, Story, and then, of course, if these guys are starting down here, you might take a look at them. Tony Wolters at a 791. I know it's only a 10 at-bat sample size, but a 791 WOBA is serious business. You might want to take a look at them. When I come down to Houston, Altuve, Bregman, and Gurriel, this didn't really open up much after that happened. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see what that may squelch my Houston desires, I guess, if you will, a little bit. When I look at St. Louis, this is where a lot of your value bats are going to come from. People running McCullers are going to have to come into this St. Louis lineup tonight, most likely, for some value bats, and probably are going to find a lot of stacking going on in that scenario. So what you're going to want to do when you have one pitcher that everybody should be taking, you're going to probably want to fade St. Louis, and you're probably going to want to stack the players that are going against McCullers, which would be Oakland. So let's jump back over to the Trends tab just for a contrarian type of stack idea. Click on Oakland, and we'd be using Olsen, Davis, Piscotty, and Lowry. Those are the bats we'd be using in that stack. You run that stack, and it doesn't have to hit too often. You find yourself right at the top of 100 man. If you can find yourself a bigger GPP on that small slate or a qualifier ticket where it's kind of winner take all, that would be where you would run a scenario like that. You might run 2 or 3 McCullers lineups. You might run a McCullers lineup and a Luke Weaver type lineup, or take a shot with a Shelby Miller. You're not going to take the Colorado guys in cash, but you're going to take a shot maybe at a little cheaper pitcher that may be a little bit safer, and then maybe that gets you into Coors Field. But really and truly, if you want to win a Q or something big, you're a qualifier, you're going to want to get into taking against McCullers because it shows signs that he's going to be the overwhelming option. When I go back to the starting pitchers, I'm going to take off that smaller game, and I'm going to put on these later games. They're not smaller game, but I'm going to put on these larger games, or these later games, I should be saying. And we're going to look, now we've got Maeda, and that's about it down here. We've still got Shelby Miller on the slate. The reason I keep bringing him up is he's dirt cheap. I know that Arizona, or I know that Colorado's swinging, decent bats, but he is dirt cheap. It's not the worst thing in the world. These guys I'd probably stay away from. I didn't see Marquez pop in there. Didn't see Marco Gonzalez pop in there, but with all of these pricing, this just doesn't have the same feel that early slate did with McCullers. Maeda is going to be chalky, but I'm not really going to run Padres against him. I don't feel like large enough large enough chance that that's going to come through and happen. So what I'm really looking for there is probably just running a whole lot of Maeda lineups and maybe mix it up a little bit down in here in case he falls flat and somebody else has a great game. But in my cash games for sure, I'm going to be 100% Maeda in this case. And now again, the pitchers that I'm looking for towards the bottom again, look at this. You got a 90 and then it drops all the way off to lower rankings. So that tells me these guys, all of these pitchers are sort of attackable or at least vulnerable to giving up some runs. I'm going to key on these guys for whatever reason. 40 tends to be my number, under 40, and I tend to key on it. So the bottom 3 is what I'd look at, Colorado, LA, and Seattle. But again, I know Arizona's pretty hot. So I would probably only avoid San Diego and LA, the Angels tonight, except for maybe a Mike Trout. He's good anywhere, and it's not like Marco Gonzalez had a great DFSA grade anyway. So when I go into the Trends tab and do the exact same thing, I take this game off, and I put these games on. Now what I'm going to find is a lot of these guys start coming to the top. And there's Arizona in there a lot again. That's going to be a good thing. I'm still set at 350 for a 3-game slate over here in the L7 Wobas. If you want more time and you need more time to digest these quicker videos that I'm doing, you need to become a VIP. I can explain more to you there. I do give my VIPs deeper dives into videos and tips and things like that, where I'm trying to communicate to 1,500-1,600 people at one time, probably 400 or 500 in my channel alone, that I'm trying to communicate to and teach. So again, follow the link in the comments section of the video. Become a VIP where I can really help you more than I have time to help you in these shorter public videos. So when I'm looking here, again, I go to Arizona. You already know the playables there. Colorado, you know the playables there. I'm not going to find anybody too terribly hot in LA. You would take, if you were going to play guys, these would be the guys you play. And again, you might watch for the cheaper bats in Pujols and Calhoun. I don't think they're going to be very highly owned. Dodgers were one of the teams that we said that we might utilize. Grandal, Bellinger, Utley if he starts. I don't think Tolles is obviously going to start. So what we're looking for here is, it's not a great opportunity. Plus, they're not all that hot. So maybe the Dodgers aren't the best offense for you to stack against. But again, don't be surprised if they have a big game. And don't be surprised, being the Dodgers, if a whole bunch of people that didn't just see these numbers right here get on them anyway. So that can lead towards some guys being disappointed because they didn't do the research, or it can lead towards them accidentally getting lucky by playing those players and them having a good night because they're facing a bad pitcher. So I don't know exactly how that one's going to pan out. I do know that I'm less interested in the Dodgers after just looking at this with you in this last 30 seconds. Not too interested in Seattle either. Haniger's great, Spahn is great, but and then D. Gordon or Segura's been great this year too, and Seager's been kind of hot. So those are other names that I would possibly dig into a little bit to see maybe they've got some BVP against these bats. Maybe they've got a little bit of something that might make me want to do a Seattle stack. But as of right now, Haniger and Spahn are the only ones. So if Haniger and Spahn are the only ones, and out of LA, Bellinger, who's not all that hot, or Grandal, just because they're in a good spot. And then I would come over to Colorado and Arizona and do my focus there. Colorado again with Blackman, Cargo, Story. That'd be what I'd try and get into with the cheaper bats. So again, if you wanted to get away, use McCullers on that first slate and then save your Colorado exposure for this later slate, that's also a viable strategy. That's how you would use those two slates to kind of ping pong off of each other, if you will, and then of course come down into Arizona and pick up a lot of these bats here. No guarantee they're going to have a great night, but man, they've got more hot bats in their offense than any of these other guys do. So your odds are stacked a little bit more in that favor. Let me jump in, since you've seen sort of the playables and seen an idea of sort of where I'm going to go, sort of where I thought I was going to go, but then of course changed my mind a little bit and kind of came off of that thought a little bit. Let's show you the little trick that I want to show you, and another reason why the DFS Army is going to be a powerhouse coming up here shortly. We have now put ownership projections from a A+ rated third-party source into our Domination Station that we've partnered up with. It's proprietary. I can't tell you exactly where it comes from, but what I can tell you is it's a good way of identifying the chalk. What I've done is I've come down here and I've cut these games out, so we're only dealing with the main slate games. If you want to see where the ownerships are on these, sorry, you got to be a VIP. But what you can look at is these 4 games here and see that even on the main slate, because this ownership only comes for the main slate, it's not adjusted for the smaller slate. This is their main slate projection as far as ownership numbers. You're going to see Coors is going to be fairly heavy up top with bats and whatnot. When I'm trying to find my pitchers, I don't have a lot in the 15-game slate. And notice that the McCullers and these guys are all, you know, off of here a little bit. Maeda, he should be a little bit more popular than that. But what you're going to see is these are the guys that are likely going to be popular on the later slates. Because if they're popular enough to register on the main slate, when the late slate rolls around and you don't have all of those options, you know, that we had before, like your, you know, Chris Sale or your whatever, Freddie Peralta, DeGrom, Fulte Newitz types, when you don't have those guys on this later slate, these are all that are left over, and so they're going to wind up being rather chalky. Let's see. I just wanted to show you the ownership projection stuff here really quick, because I want to show you that when you organize it, see, I can stack it by low or stack it by high. When I stack it by high, this should be the chalk on the night for the most part. And when the main slate comes in, sometimes you see some 30s and 40s and whatever on the smaller 6, 7, 8 game main slates. But this is pretty exciting stuff, because when we know where the chalk is, we can then get off the chalk appropriately in GPPs and give ourselves an ownership advantage the rest of the industry doesn't have. So that's really the main point that I'm trying to show you, where that is in our tools and how important this is going to become NFL and NBA season to really start dodging the chalk. Chalk's a little fluky in MLB, but in the other sports, man, it can really, really help out. So I'm going to wrap the video up now, keep it under 15 minutes, tell you once again, become a member and a VIP inside DFS Army, use code CHOP, C-H-O-P, and then I'm going to dive in and start coaching up some of my VIPs, and we're going to get these small slates rolling, where we're going to be at the top of leaderboards hopefully tonight, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace out.